Hello, welcome to Podsongs. I'm Jack Stafford, and I interview inspiring people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today, I'm speaking with a lifestyle coach. Now, normally I try and stay clear of performance coaches because they can be a bit preachy. But Pat is such a lovely guy that I'm going to make an exception. Let's have a nice chat with Pat Divilly. Because you're such an experienced podcaster, I'll stay straight out the bat that I don't have a lot of questions for you. It's not going to be like a job interview. We just chat and I know you can do that because most of your podcasts you've been just yourself. No, you're talking to the listener, but you're on your own at the time you record it.
Yes,
So.
yeah. How do you come across the podcast, Jack?
Say that again. Sorry.
How did you become aware of my podcast? Or
I've got a lot of Irish friends, and I asked because I'm a big fan of Blind Boy podcast.
Funny,
So,
I met him last night just to ask him if he'd come on mine, but he intimidates me. He's so intelligent. I don't think I can hold a flame to him. But
well, you talk to the mic. I have to record a small intro to my podcast, and that's the hardest bit. You have to write it down, and then make sure it's all right. And I've got no one to. I can't have all these thinking noises that I have in my conversation now. So it's all you have to get it right. No ums and buts. But if I'm chatting to you, it's kind of like we're just having a conversation. So it's relaxed. I don't have to speak perfectly. But how do you do it? You just practice, I guess.
Yeah, practice, and I think it's almost paradoxical in terms of if you allow yourself to be a little bit loose with it, it tends to flow a little better. I guess like music, I find that say you're doing a 20-minute episode. If you're super strict with your words from the get-go and you're super trying to get everything really tight and really in line, then if you make any little blip, it feels like you've gone way off the radar. Whereas if you're a little bit looser at the start, there's a bit of, just a bit of, I don't know. So if you're doing intros, I don't know. One thing that's useful I find is to do a few in a day. So I try to do 6 episodes in a day because like anything else, you find your flow. It's very difficult to sit down and record a 5-minute intro and then walk away and then come back next week. It's easier to boom, 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 boom if you can. Not always practical, but.
So we're coming the other way around to it because I'm going to have to record my intros views now, but you're now turning to interviews now that you're swinging your podcast.
I'm going to go every second one. That's the plan now, I think. Yeah, it's a couple of things. One is you get a bit more humble as you get older and you start to realize that people have interesting things to say and I'm not. No, there was a couple of things. I didn't think I was good at interviewing people. So obviously you only get better by practicing. So I'm going to start practicing. But obviously it opens up the audience a bit more if you're only got your own people. Sorry, I cut you off when you were saying where you had heard of mine, but obviously word of mouth, you were saying... obviously, if I can get some big names on and some of Blind Boy's audience say, "Oh, this was cool," if he ever comes on. I contacted Russell Brand last night, but who knows? You chances. But also, to be honest, the lockdown. I think I'm isolated here on my own, so it's nice to have the conversations, more than it would have been before.
Yeah. So how is the lockdown in Ireland? It's quite strict, no?
Yeah, it's been quite strict. Where are we now? I think we've 2 more weeks of lockdown. So we've had a 5K restriction for the last month, and then prior to that we had other restrictions. We've been on the go now since March with no pubs or no the pubs.
Ireland.
I know. Are you in Italy? Are you Italy or Spain? Italy.
I'm in Italy. Yeah.
What part?
Well, the Cilento. It's just opposite the Amalfi Coast, south of Napoli.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it is. So we've been in, we had lockdown in March as well. Now we've gone back in. And the first time around, I was kind of okay with it. It's like thinking nobody really knew. But now I think it's just a big overreaction. So I don't know what your personal...
Yeah, well... It's funny only for not funny, but only for the videos of the hospital in Italy at the very start. You remember those horrifying videos?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah,
was like something out of a scary movie. But
yeah.
outside of that, I mean, I don't know anyone that's. I know a few that have got it, but they haven't been. They've just gone about their usual. I don't know anyone who's passed. It's always a friend of a friend of a friend, which again, it does seem like an overreaction. And look, I think what a lot of people are saying, which I probably agree with, is the first time it came around, it was unprecedented, and we didn't have the data to back up what we were doing. But the second time, the data is there, and it doesn't seem justifiable to. There's people dying in car crashes, and they're putting them down as COVID deaths. If they had COVID, so it's. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. And how many people die from cigarettes? And we haven't seen a, because you're a fitness, don't tell to you about healthy living. I mean, how many people die from unnecessary deaths from obesity and cigarettes?
Yeah, and that was an interesting thing when I remember my dad sent me an article from the BBC on the first lockdown, and that was something they really highlighted. They said we're looking at the people that are contracting this virus and getting really sick from it. They said it's people that are overweight and obese. Like there was a lot of doctors saying that's the primary
So
concern.
here's the idea: we'll make them sit on the couch for 6 months.
Yeah.
This will work.
Well, what's blowing my mind, Jack, is the like, I don't know what it's like in other places, but there's a lot of talk from the government of, there's a mental health crisis coming and this kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the solution, but one of the solutions in my mind will be pay 100 psychologists, put them in a room together or put them on Zoom together for a week and come up with a program that gets ran out to the whole country and give them some tools, because otherwise you've got jabronis like me just putting out podcasts about how to journal and how to meditate, and people find it useful, but there's only a small percentage who will listen to that. Whereas if the government put in place a strategic plan for this mental health issue, I don't know, it's like suicides are on the up. So it's tough on people. I'm grateful to be in I'm lucky. My life is relatively unaffected. So
I've been living in quarantine for 20 years, so
people say I'm a little bit like that myself.
Yeah. I mean, you're ahead of the curve. You're telling everyone to meditate, but just goes to show when if the government needs 400 billion or something, they can get it overnight. But imagine if they'd what you could do with that amount of, you could solve pretty much any crisis now.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's a weird world. Someone asked me, I did a talk back in February, and someone at the end asked, it was the biggest talk I'd ever done, so it was a huge room, and there's a bit of Q&A at the end, and some lady said, what do you think about the way the government sells, or what do you think about how the government promotes mental health and where they've fallen short and stuff like that? And I said I'm probably going to let a lot of people down here in the room, but they have expectations on my thoughts on this. But I said, I don't know anything about what the government does. I don't know where the mental health budget goes. Like the only thing I can control in life is myself and my own self-care. And I said, like, if I meditate and I journal and I do these things, I get insights that are hopefully helpful through my podcast. And that's what I see as my contribution to the world. So any effort I put into, and I'm not saying I'm right in this regard, but any effort I put into complaining about the government or, whatever it might be, is time away from myself that doesn't help anyone. And Ram Dass, this spiritual teacher who I love, said, the only thing I can do for you is work on me, and the only thing you can do for me is work on you. And I think that's powerful. But then there's other people, and they're like, I think everyone's got not that everyone's got a purpose, but everyone kind of fits into this jigsaw puzzle. And if everyone does what feels right to them, it works, the ecosystem works. And I think for other people, then lobbying and trying to figure out how the government should operate, that's their thing. But for me, it's kind of be on the ground level and hopefully share some practical tools with a certain amount of people. But
yeah, be the change you want to see in the world. And I think it's like if you're in a good place, if you're you're a type of person who's doing well and happy and motivating, you do even better in like a lockdown, don't you? I mean, you can get finally I got some time to do this stuff. But if you're, I was reading one article that this lockdown and this isolation is going to increase a lot of people's prejudices, because you don't go to work and mix with people from other races and other sexes, and you don't have that. You can just tune into your news feed, which is, as we all know, is designed to support your own beliefs and affirmations. And so it's not going to help a lot of people in that respect.
Yeah, man, it's Yeah, there's interesting challenges ahead, right? I'm chatting with my friend Udo next week. Udo is Dr. Udo. He has the Udo's oils. I don't know if you've ever come across them. He's probably in his 70s now. Canadian guy, world famous brand. Dr. Udo Erasmus. I might be able to link you up if he could be. He's an amazing guy. So Udo, back in the, I'm probably gonna. Are we recording here for a release?
Yeah. Well, because of the production time on the songs,
yeah.
I'm always a few months ahead. So
okay. Udo's backstory. I'll get this a little bit wrong, but it's close enough. He went through a divorce when he was younger, so he's in his 70s now, and he was really bitter at life and frustrated at life, and so he became he went and he did weed killing. So he was spraying pesticides all day or just killing weeds because he wanted to kill something, he said. And he ended up contracting some virus or something he got very sick as a result of spraying this stuff all day. And he was going to all the doctors. Nobody seemed to be able to cure him. And he decided, well, obviously what I put in my body is going to have an effect on the cells that I create. And he became interested in nutrition. I think he went vegan. And he came up with an oil that takes the perfect blend of omega-3s and 6s, puts them together. And he worked on this oil for years, and it's sold all over the world. He's written incredible books. He studied like the healthy fats and all this kind of thing. But anyway, why did he pop into my mind? I was chatting to Udo yesterday. He's going to come on the podcast next week, but we were talking about this, and that guy's such a voice of reason. He's incredible. But he talks about that idea of taking care, he calls it being taken care of. So he says, like, when you meditate or when you take a step back or when you journal or when you play music or when you connect to God, whatever you think God is, you recognize that you're taken care of. So there's something there that keeps your heart beating. There's something there that, is just holding you and protecting you, and things are working. But I messaged him, and he's one of these people where, whatever you say to him, he's going to come back with something kind of deeper. And I said to him, I hope you're well.
I hate people like that. Yeah. Oh my God.
But
just when I read a level of profundity that I haven't reached before, and then it's just sliding underneath.
I said to him, I hope you're well. And he said to me, I am well. He said, there's a part in all of us that is unshaken by the external chaos or something like that. And it was this just come back to the calm.
He could have been reading that from like, have him on the tea bags or like a calendar,
possibly
just have it by the telephone.
We'll find out at some stage. Yeah, I don't know where he gets this stuff, but he's incredible. I don't know why that popped into my head.
No, that's the great thing about podcasting, because I'm here. It's rainy day in the south of Italy. I don't have stimulating conversation. I can go and speak to the goat lady or the guy in this in the supermarket here, but I don't really have. I'm one of the only foreigners here, so I'm in the middle of the countryside basically. But I can chat to people like you, interesting people on the other side of Europe, and have a great chat.
It's also raining here, if that brings it together.
Well, you're in Galway now.
Yeah, seemingly 200 days a year, rain a year or more. And it gives me a good story that I always tell in terms of like how we approach life. I always tell people 3 options in Galway with the rain. The first is you complain for the rest of your life, and you say this is unfair. You try to fight with reality. And then the second is you get out of Galway, or you learn to windsurf. You change your situation. And then the third is you change your perspective and just accept what is. So that's learn to dance in the rain. And it's the same for us all. It's like some people hate their job and they just fight with that every day. And again, your 3 options are: number 1, fight with yourself for the rest of your life, for the rest of your career, saying this is not fair. Number 2 is leave the job. Number 3 is change your perspective around the job. So recognize it's not my perfect job, but it puts money in my mouth, or money in my pocket and food in my mouth.
But I see your photos on. You're out in the middle of the Atlantic there. No, that's the Irish Sea. No, the Atlantic, isn't it, that side?
The Wild Atlantic Way. The sea's been a godsend over lockdown, because I was telling people with self-care, like self-care is kind of this I don't know, somewhat fluffy word. Sometimes people might perceive it that way, but to me, it's anchors that you have in life that just keep you grounded amidst the chaos. So certain people provide anchors for us. The people that we go to when we're going through a breakup or life is just getting hectic, and certain behaviors and activities. And a lot of my anchors would have disappeared with the lockdown, obviously, with jiu-jitsu and you know, the people that I would have met and all this stuff. So again, you could fight with reality and say this isn't fair, and feel bad for yourself, or you just kind of pivot and you say, how can I anchor myself now, and have a daily practice that just whatever else happens, there's that consistency. And the sea has become that for me, so that's been great.
You can't go out more than, you don't swim out more than 5K now. Anymore.
Oh, if I could do that. I'll tell you what was cool, and it was probably an interesting. I thought it was an interesting observation. Was generally in August every year, a friend of mine organizes a swim, which is 13 kilometers, to honor her mum. So her mum died years ago, and it was a real swimming family, and it's gotten bigger and bigger every year. So people swim 13 kilometers in a day, like from one island over to Galway. It's incredible. I cry when I watch them coming in because it's just.
You've never done it.
Oh no! I someday I hope. That wouldn't be a good swim. Well, I haven't put much time into swimming. So, but this year with COVID, they said, right, we're going to do it different. Rather than 13K in a day, they call it swim the bay your own way. So it's do 13K over the month, and you can break it up whatever way you want. And so August, every day we'd go down in the morning and do a couple of 100 meters with friends and grab a coffee, and it was such a nice. It was one of those, it taught you about consistency, because if you missed a couple of days, you're looking at your friend and they've done, it's like how many do you've left in the month, and it's like coming down to the wire, because if you miss days, it starts clocking up on you. It's kind of like anything, I suppose. If you're learning guitar and you don't pick up the guitar for a couple of weeks and everyone else is playing a few chords every day.
I was left behind years ago.
I love the concept of this podcast. I think it's really clever.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's another child of lockdown.
Nice.
You know? Yeah. But just before when you're walking out into the sea there, because I live, you know, I've got it's the Tyrrhenian Sea here. It's beautiful, but it's cold to me, so I can't imagine walking out into the Atlantic. I mean, that takes some cojones, though.
The cojones disappear once you get in. So again, a friend said this the other week, and I thought it was good. He said that if you go and you're sat at the beach and you watch how people approach that process of getting in the sea.
Yeah, very, very slowly.
No, he said you learn about people. You learn about how people treat life, because there's some people, you know, take 10 people, they're all getting in one way or another, but say 5 of them just walk in decisively, put their shoulders back and just get in as quick as possible because it's got to be done. So I'm going to do it. Whereas others tip their toe in the water and they fight with themselves in their head and they torment themselves. But there's it's an important thing in life, but it's a practice, right? It's a practice. Decisiveness is a practice. And I think it's an important practice that a lot of us don't take ownership of things, myself included in certain areas, in terms of being decisive and just making decisions, because we overthink. We live in our heads and, well, what will happen if this happens and this happens? And it's kind of like, how do you apply that decisiveness to all aspects of life? Because, you know, decision obviously changes everything. You could have thought about doing this podcast for 10 years, but the day you actually decided, it was a different energy to it. Same thing, you know, I went surfing for the first time 2 years ago. I had thought about doing it for 10 years. And then someday I decided this is happening today, and just went for 2 hours and fell off the board 100 times and felt very accomplished, because the second you step into something and do it, it's a world apart from thinking about it. And too many of us living in our heads, I think.
Yeah, I've heard you say that you deliberately, you know, don't make your life too easy, you know, make it hard. And then, you know, when you come to do things, a lot of people have the opposite approach, you know, try and make your life very easy and cushy, and then even the slightest upset causes a major havoc. But if you're, you know, like what you do is jiu-jitsu or things like that, it's high stress.
I've been studying logotherapy recently, which is Viktor Frankl. Are you familiar with Viktor Frankl? Man's Search for Meaning?
No. No.
Oh, phenomenal. Perfect book for these times that we're in. So Viktor Frankl was a Viennese psychotherapist and neurologist, and he was in 4 concentration camps, him and his family, and he was in Auschwitz and 3 others, and not working in the capacity of being a psychotherapist, but was interested in, okay, I learned all this stuff in the books. Like, how does the mind...
So he was a psychotherapist before he went into the camps?
Neurologist and psychotherapist. And so he's looking at, 1 in 28 people survived. And like just horrendous, his whole family were killed from what I remember in the camp. But anyway, he became fascinated with how do some people go through the most inhospitable conditions. And I'm going to butcher his quote a little bit, but it was something to the effect that everything in life can be taken from you, but the last of the human freedoms, which is your freedom to choose. Your effectively your freedom to choose what something means. So, he chose to find meaning in his life. And the reason I mention this is they looked then at the different Viennese schools of psychotherapy. So if you branch them into 3, the first was Sigmund Freud. And Freud was obsessed with this idea that humans inherently look for pleasure and to avoid pain. So look for pleasure to avoid pain. So we're these kind of reactive and compulsive individuals that should just seek out pleasure. And then Adler came along, and he said, no, we're tribal beings. And so domination and validation and being dominant and being important is kind of the primary driver for us in life. And then Frankl came along, and Frankl said, this is a guy in the concentration camps. He said, no, it's about meaning. You've got to find meaning in your suffering because life is suffering. And they look at that then and they say, look, if you mirror that to the development of a human being, as a child, you seek pleasure. As an adolescent, you seek power because you wear these masks and you want to be rough and tumble. And then in theory, as a mature adult, you should seek meaning in your suffering, a meaningful life. But most people now are seeking happiness as the goal. They want to be happy, and they confuse happiness with pleasure. And so they chase pleasure all day. And if I chase pleasure or I chase external approval, where's the room for meaning? And so the reality of that, whole kind of thing is meaning comes in different ways. But I mean, meaning comes from creating something of value for the world, or it comes from gratitude towards an experience that you're getting from the world. So it's giving or taking. And then it also comes from finding meaning in the most, again, inhospitable conditions. So one nice example from one of the books that he wrote was that there was a lady who was terminally ill. This was post concentration camps, but terminally ill and just really suffering, and everyone around her was suffering. She only had a couple of months to live, and she thought, like, was down, feeling down and out, obviously. And then she made this decision. She was like, I'm going to be a beacon of light and a beacon of strength for the people around me that are so hurt by what's going on for me. And she said, despite the pain she was feeling in those last couple of months, and despite, just how rough life had gotten, her being this beacon of strength for the people around her, she said it gave her more peace and it gave her meaning in life. It was like, I've done something now with my life that never would have happened only for this difficulty. And obviously that's the case for a lot of people. It takes getting to that low point to find the meaning and to find the purpose and to go. He talks about self-transcendence, which is going beyond the self, and that could be love, or it could be, like, the best example is probably you go to a marathon and 90% of the people at a marathon have a t-shirt on with a charity name on the top, because they're not just running for themselves, it's beyond themselves. But sorry, so back to your point was, so many of us seek this life of pleasure. And I mean, you look at celebrity culture, you can look at a lot of these famous athletes and actors that achieve everything they thought they ever wanted through hard work and suffering and routine and discipline. And then they get the money and suddenly they seek the pleasure and the power, and the wheels come off. So there can never be an end line. There can never be, once I get there, I'll be happy. Because I think life should be directional as opposed to like destination oriented. Like so if you think about a values driven life, that's really important. Like rather than me saying, take a weight loss example, I want to lose 2 stone and then I'll be happy. If that person does it, then they get there, they'll feel temporarily happy, but then they need something else. So I think a better goal, if you will, would be values based. And the value could be, I value health and vitality in my life. And so I make decisions based on that, not on how I feel. I make decisions based on my values, not my feelings. So one of my values is embracing suffering for the right things. I'm willing to suffer for jiu-jitsu because it brings a lot to my life, but I'm not willing to suffer for dance classes because that just doesn't interest me. So, that's important too. And if you're chasing someone else's goal and you're trying to suffer for something that doesn't matter to you, that's when life, I think, gets difficult.
So when you're doing like your personal training, do you give people these directional goals rather than these destinational goals?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the fitness stuff I haven't done in a long time, but I used to do it without recognizing it. So I did the fitness stuff probably till 2016, and then I started doing talks and retreats and the kind of the personal development stuff based on what I saw working with thousands of people. And my own experience was waking up at 28, having ticked all the boxes I thought you were supposed to tick to be happy, and just thinking, Viktor Frankl calls it the existential vacuum, the emptiness that we feel despite the comforts and the convenience that we have. I think at that time, when I was back training the clients, what I used to, the typical story was someone would come and they would say, I want to lose weight for a wedding. And then they'd lose the weight for the wedding. And I'd ask them, what's the goal now? And they'd say, I want to maintain the weight loss. And I'd always tell them that's a disaster. That's not a good move because it's putting a glass ceiling on yourself, and life becomes dull and uninspiring when there's a glass ceiling there, because we're supposed to grow. Everything in nature grows, whether it's, you're growing or you're dying. That's the reality. There's no in between. There is no. And so I'd encourage people, the way we used to do it back then was saying, okay, you've lost the weight. Now what's possible? You can run a 5K now. Okay, I don't want to run a 5K. Maybe you could learn to swim now. Maybe you could learn to dance now. Maybe you could do a Tough Mudder now. So we would always put the carrot on the string, I guess, if you put it that way, or whatever they call it. But again, that's directional in a way, because in it, I guess it's like, are you familiar with James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, that he brought out recently? Brilliant.
Gosh. You read a lot. You're making me look bad. You keep saying all these names. I've got no idea.
Do you know what?
It's good for the readers. Can you say it again? Because for the listeners.
It's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. You know what? In school, I didn't feel very academic, and I always struggled with academics and didn't have an interest in it. It was only when I really got into, I was always interested in personal development, but I struggle with the heavier stuff. I struggle to read the heavier stuff, but I do like anything to do with human behavior. But James Clear talks about process versus outcome versus identity. And so these are kind of three levels of goals. And the way you might look at it is, most people set an outcome goal. So the outcome goal, as an example, might be, my outcome is I want to run a marathon. My outcome is I want to win a gold medal in the Olympics. My outcome is I want to perform live on stage at a festival. So that's level one, outcome goal. The second kind of improvement upon that will be to do a process goal. So you take, okay, a marathon or performing live on stage at a festival, what's required on a daily basis for that to happen over time? So now I'm thinking about, well, for a marathon, I'd have to complete a training plan. You break it down to what's the actual process? Because again, 100 people in a room, all 100 can say they want to run the marathon. Maybe a small percentage will do the plan and do the process. And then the third level is identity. So that's, how do I see myself? So can I see myself as the person who completes this? So the example I would often use is, if you go to dinner with someone who's vegan, and the person comes out and they show the menu and they say, guys, we have a great steak on the menu. Do you want the steak? The vegan's not going to be like, they're not going to fight with themselves and battle with themselves and have to deal with willpower, because there's a rule in their identity. Their identity is, I don't eat meat. Whereas the person who's on a diet, the person comes out with the dessert menu. And, do you want dessert? Oh, I shouldn't really, but maybe, there's this fight with willpower.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, but James Clear talks about this idea that if you go to the Olympics, everybody going to the Olympics has the same goal. And it's kind of the same is true of life, I would say. Like, most of us have the same goals. We want to be happy. We want to make some money. We want to not have financial stresses and worries. We want meaningful relationships. So everyone's got the same goal. And the difference then is the process. But everyone's obsessed with the goal. Everyone's obsessed with where they want to be, but they're not obsessed with what they're going to do daily. So again, that's that idea that If I know where I want to go and I recognize that suffering is required, then I just break it down to the day. And it's kind of like, okay, well, where do I want to be? I want to be in a position a year from now where energetically I feel good. I wake up in the morning and I'm excited about my day. I want to have work that brings meaning and purpose to my life. I want to have relationships that feel like they have depth and they're not shallow and surface level. Oh, sorry.
No problem.
And I want to, I want to have hobbies that are exciting and bring joy to my life. So that's where I want to be. Okay, what's required on a daily basis now? Well, to do meaningful work, I've got to sit down and I've got to work even on the days when I don't want to work. To have meaningful relationships, I've got to invest in those relationships all the time, not just when I feel like it. To be healthy, I've got to, and again, that's down to values. A lot of us act on our feelings. So when I feel motivated, I do what a motivated person does. When I feel lazy, I do what a lazy person does. If I can define 3 or 4 values, this could be like really useful, I think, for anyone. What are the 4 values? Like if you were to look at yourself in the future and say, here's the 4 values that have driven my life for the last 5 years. And I might say, I was driven by consistency. I was driven by curiosity. I was driven by compassion for myself and for others. And I was driven by clarity and being very clear on what's important. Or simplicity, I think, is another good one. Like simplicity, we all fall into that trap of kind of saying, okay, the next 12 months, here's my goals. And then we get the shiny object syndrome. We listen to a podcast, we say, oh, maybe that's a goal as well. And that's a goal. Okay, I'm going to add that as well. And my friend's doing this. Okay, I might do that. And suddenly that simple plan that we had is all over the place. And I talk a lot, Jack, sorry.
I'm just going to make a cup of tea and I'll listen to the show when I come back. You're used to doing these podcasts on your own. No, it's great. I mean, it's making my job a lot easier. I mean, this is great. I'm feeling I'm learning here. Please carry on. I mean, now I can see the difference between you and me. We're walking into the sea, and your identity is you're this action man. So that rolls you out into the rollers, to the big waves. So that's kind of once you've got that set up, that identity is very important, though.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that can change in a day. One thing I've always tried to impart on people, and again, I have to obviously bring it into my own life as well, because it's not like I have all this figured out. But if I work in a job that I'm not overly fulfilled by, I talk about work because work is a third of our life, really. And I have this dream that, okay, my ultimate dream in life is, again, I'm going to play music at a festival. That's my dream. And when that happens, I'll be happy. A lot of people put the happiness in the future and they think that they'll become that person the day that they step on the stage. For me, you become that person the day you decide you're going to be that person. So again, my external situation might not be different tomorrow in terms of I'm still in the same job that I don't like. But if I wake up in the morning and I start treating myself as the person who's going to perform live on the stage or whatever the thing I want to do is, suddenly I go about life in a different way. A bit of a crazy or a daft story, but years ago, a bunch of my friends worked in a factory and they all hated working in the factory. Just wasn't their thing. And, nothing wrong with factories, of course. It was just for them, they were just a bit fed up. They weren't fulfilled. They were a bit all over the place. And one guy would always turn up with a smile on his face. And the guys were like, what's the story? Why do you always...
What did you do last night?
Yeah. But it was every day. So he was either doing something good at night, every night, or he was enjoying the work. And he said, I'm not enjoying the work because I know why I'm here. And it turned out his dream in life was to go and work on a safari over in Africa. And so he recognized that by showing up at the factory, despite it not being his dream job, every day he earned a couple of euro, he put it aside. And someday he was going to go and work in a safari in Africa, which was the dream. And one by one, they all stopped working in the factory and ended up in different places. And a couple of years later, my friend bumped into this guy and he said, guess what? Next week, it's my last shift and I'm moving to Africa. And he moved to Africa and lived happily ever after working on a safari. And the point of the story is, you have to find meaning. Viktor Frankl, again, I'm kind of buried in his work at the moment. And I think it's so relevant at the moment. His book is called Man's Search for Meaning, if people want to get a start with it. But he talks about ultimate meaning versus the meaning of the moment. And he says, everybody in life is looking for ultimate meaning, which is, why are we all here, man? What's this all about? And this big esoteric question. And he goes, no, just find meaning in the moment. Just find meaning at the position where you are in life right now. Make sense of the madness. So, again, I use that example, and maybe I'm not happy in my work at the moment. What's my work giving me, or what can my work be giving me? Okay, it's giving me a couple of euro. It's giving me a couple of hours free in the evening. Maybe they offered the chance to upskill in some capacity that I can bring with me into the future. So again, your identity changes the day you decide that, okay, this is where I'm going. Again, directional. I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes me think that I think the search for the meaning of life, the purpose of life, is happiness, just not your own. And that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is interview people who are in service to others. That's what I'm trying to do. So speaking to people like yourself, I mean, you've raised so much for charity, and you're all about training other people and other people's development. So, and obviously it's rubbed off on you. You wouldn't read all these books to be studying if really you weren't doing it so that you could be a better teacher, a better example, and able to help other people. So you're obviously benefiting because of that. Now, I think I heard your father told you that when you're having a crisis, that you're being too. You should think about
one of my many crises. Yeah, my dad's always been kind of tough love kind of guy. He's not going to mollycoddle or whatever the word is. And I was at the lowest point of my life. I was 24. I just fallen into a deep depression, moved back in with my parents. I was completely lost for 5-6 months. He kind of gave me a kick up the ass, and he said, half your problem is you're self-obsessed. You're obsessed with your own problems. You're obsessed with your own struggles, your own difficulties. Go and help people. And my mentality at the time was, I can barely get out of bed. Who can I help? Yeah. And there's always someone you can help, he said. And then started offering free fitness plans, and that led to my first paying client. Like, I did my TED talk, and I talked about my first day at the beach. 5 clients showed up, and they didn't show up out of nowhere. The step before that was I was providing free plans online for months. So yeah, that got me out of my own way. And the other thing that just popped into my head there when you were talking about we're all in this pursuit of happiness. The other thing that my experience is that happiness is a byproduct, and you can't chase happiness for happiness. Like, if you chase happiness, you'll be miserable. It's kind of ironic, but it's like the people you meet in life that say, I just want to be happy. Like, they never find it because, they're so obsessed. They're looking in the wrong place. Like, the happiness comes.
You're so happy when you've helped someone else, though, because that's lasting. Yeah. And you can always look back on that and say that your own judgment, you'll say, oh, I wasn't really happy then because after this happened. But that's kind of concrete, when you help other people.
Yeah. I think it's great to have the evidence there that, I think you have to do it again and again, though. But the more you do something, the more evidence you have that it's possible. But again, it's back to that. If you pursue meaning, the happiness will come as a byproduct. If you chase happiness, you'll lack meaning. So it's because, again, you think about the general population, 99% of people are chasing happiness. But then, like, when I was running around the world in my 20s, trying to find gurus and mentors and coaches that had all the answers, sometimes I'd go and I'd spend a fortune. Then I come back to my local village. I'd bump into a farmer on the road who's 3 times my age, and like, he would just he would just seem so happy. We're like, well, what's in that man's life that makes him so happy? Simple life, manual labor all day. So he's not living in his head. He's actually doing work that, again, is meaningful because it puts food on his table. And it was like, again, it's interesting because I'm in the personal development space. I run these conferences for hundreds of people, but some of us that are seeking this stuff so desperately, it's right under our nose in terms of what we need to do. We need to do the work. And the farmers teach me that.
Yeah. Well, down the road in Italy where I live is Acciaroli, just a few kilometers down the sea. And I think that's where people live the oldest. There's more centenarians than, I think it's 1 in 10 of the population is over 100. Yeah. So
the blue zones, is that what they're called, those places?
That's blue zones. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they don't know if people are coming to test. Anchel Keys went to live there, and he did the the Mediterranean diet, and he lived to over 100 living there. He died. He's in Piopi, the next village down. So
wow.
yeah.
You know about that whole study with the saturated fats thing?
I do, yeah. It was kind of it's been a bit disproven now, isn't it? The old anchovy.
I'm sorry.
Come on, Pat, you're not showing your professionalism here. So.
I don't know. I don't know how.
Would you do that on your podcast? Would you? Would you?
It would depend. It would depend on deadlines. Parkinson's law. I don't know how to turn that off my computer. Sorry.
Oh, I thought it was your phone.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
No problem. I would edit it out, but I want this to be the real Pat Divilly.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a bit like that as well. I've been on like real professional podcasts sometimes, and if this host stumbles over his words in the smallest way, he'll tell his producer, he'll be like, edit that bit out. Yeah. And I'm like, gosh, conversation.
I asked mine to insert some more intelligent comments, so you might want to listen back because I'm going to be a lot funnier in the actual recording.
Oh god.
But yeah, that study, because that Mediterranean diet, because you probably know the story about it with the argument whether sugar is better or fat is better, sugar is worse or fat is worse, and all the saturated fats. And I had another guest on my podcast, this vegan doctor, and I was trying to chat to him about it, and he wasn't really up for that. No, carbs were bad, and that.
My understanding with that, from what I remember, because you talk about this in seminars, was that research was done in the link between fats ingested and then fat on the body. So if I eat more fat, I'll hold more fat in my body and it's dangerous and whatever else. And so Keyes studied, was it 22 countries or something like that? Mm-hmm. And the results came out and they were all over the place. He didn't have any correlating data. So he removed half the countries so that the hypothesis fit. But what was interesting to me about that whole thing was, beyond the dietary stuff, was groupthink, in terms of like, when we're told something and people believe in something and something is backed up, it changes the whole narrative of society. And so then you question,
it's still going. Like my girlfriend, has the breakfast cereals, and it says, super low in fat, and the second ingredient on there is sugar. So what the work he did, Anshul Keyes, is still affecting all the food in the supermarket. That was a huge thing.
Yeah. And it shows up in different ways, right? Like I've heard this comparison, it's a little bit different, but social media. So if you look at the founders of all the different social media platforms across the board, they were all white, young guys that were socially inept by their own admissions or their own kind of standards, reclusive, et cetera, et cetera. So all these guys, exact same, tiny percentage of the population. And they come up with this way of communicating that worked better for them. It was easier to talk on social media and messengers and forums and things than it was to communicate in person. And suddenly, for some reason, the whole world bought into the narrative. And now we're all communicating in a way that really only makes sense for the smallest of smallest percentile. And again, it's interesting, and that's the kind of thing Tim Leary used to say, think for yourself and question authority. Yeah, if you don't put healthy challenges in your life, life gives you... If you don't put healthy challenges in your life, life gives you unhealthy challenges. I look back in my early 20s and I recognize I used to drink like a fish and go out and go crazy on nights out and stuff. And part of that was the lack of purpose outside of that, because, I was making life difficult for myself because there wasn't enough healthy difficulty in my life. So it's probably a different thing, but on it, like addictive patterns that we have, it's always worth considering.
Do you think you're a better life coach now because you went through that?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, look, being a very flawed individual who's often a hypocrite, it makes for more, I think,
helps.
Yeah, for sure. Like if I'm never jealous of guys who seem to just be able to change a habit like that, or to be able to change, like, it just doesn't, that's not me. And I think that's not a lot of us. It's just certain types that have that personality, but I get stuck in my patterns, I get stuck in my loops, I get stuck in my behaviors, my addictions, all this stuff. And so I was reading the other day about motivational interviewing, which is kind of a form of therapy in itself, and it's just helping people change by moving them toward change talk. So there's change or the sustain talk. Change is where I express a tiny little iota of interest in creating change in my life, even though I'm struggling, and then you just help get that out of me. Whereas sustain talk is where I talk about staying where I am. But it talks about people who succeed with overcoming addictions as an example. And they say that the people that have tried the most amount of times, paradoxically, are the ones that will succeed. So the person who has tried to give up alcohol 6 times is more likely to succeed than the person who's only tried it once or twice. So it's kind of, there's a bit of hope there.
Yeah.
But I work with people now on addictions, whether it's gambling or it's alcohol or it's drugs or whatever it might be. And one of the things that's interesting, I think, for people to explore is like, what does this give me in my life? Because we see it as a bad thing. Oh, I drink too much and I'm such a bad person and I carry shame around that. But you might ask, what does it give you? Oh, it doesn't give me anything. It's ruining my life. No, it gives you something or you wouldn't be doing it. So it gives me, it's a social lubricant. It makes me feel more comfortable in social settings. It helps me de-stress. It helps me feel connected to myself and other people. It helps me forget my worries. It helps me avoid certain problems that I'm feeling at home in my relationship. And then we write down those things and we ask, what's a healthier way of pursuing all those? So how could I manage stress in a healthier way? Meditation. How could I find a healthy community and environment where I can go after work, where I can disconnect? Jiu-jitsu, whatever it might be. But I think it's an important part of change is like this curiosity piece, rather than judgment about I'm so wrong and I'm so bad and I do all the wrong things. No, don't be judgmental. Like shame and blame will get you nowhere, but awareness and curiosity can change the game. That's important. That's why I talk about journaling a lot. It's like, have that conversation with yourself rather than berate yourself. Get curious. And it's the subtlety of, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I drink again? Like, why did I, versus, I wonder why I drank again last night. And that curiosity might say, well, you had a lot going on yesterday and you were like glued to your phone all week and you didn't have any time to de-stress, and you always go and drink. It's a reaction. But if you slow things down, you can do something different. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. That's how you come to understand yourself, I think.
That's great. Yeah. It's helped me with I'm studying yoga, metaphysics, and it's helped. There's these layers of the mind. So you've got the superconscious, the conscious, and the subconscious. So the conscious is the smallest part, but the bit that does all the talking. So, and that's just like a trained dog, like the stimulus or the habits you've learned in your life and all these bad habits. So yeah, just relearn new habits, make an effort for a month. And you'll change it, and then the subconscious will learn. And a lot of these problems come because the conscious mind's trained the subconscious, in a stressful way, and that's why you get diseases and things like that. So
yeah, I have this mantra of I don't know if maybe it's not my mantra. Maybe it's probably come from someone more intelligent. I lose track, but I have this mantra. I use this mantra of pattern or presence, and what I mean by it is when stress arrives, do I go to my pattern or do I stay present? So the example was I experienced loneliness and isolation during the first lockdown, and it kind of crept up on me, and I was staying busy with work and I was doing all the right things, I thought, but then I just felt lonely and isolated because I live alone and it's just normal, I think, to be on an emotional roller coaster at times. But then I asked myself, I think it's a lyric from some pop song, where do you go when you're lonely? And I asked myself that question, where do I go when I'm lonely? And
the pub.
Yeah, well, the answer was to alcohol or to social media or to porn or to like gambling or to like, everyone's got a different answer. Where do I go? And it's kind of interesting to recognize that, half of who we are has been shut down over the years. We think that it's wrong to be lonely, to be isolated, to feel ashamed, to feel guilty, to feel anger, to feel frustration. We think all these things are wrong. And so we pretend they're not there, and they surface. But when they start to surface and they start to bubble inside of us, we're like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, so I'll push it away through an addictive behavior. And it was interesting for me to notice that, like, that was the pattern, was when I would feel lonely or isolated, rather than sit with myself and try to get curious about it and try to figure it out and understand it, it was like run away from it. And then the presence piece is, okay, rather than the pattern, can I stay present? So the next time you experience stress, where do I go when I'm stressed? Where do I go when I'm angry? Where do I go when I'm feel shamed? Because if I don't go anywhere and I can stay with it, I can come to understand it. But if I run away from it as fast as possible, there's no understanding there, and I'll just keep recreating the same thing. So that's been an interesting.
Yeah. listen to the voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're working on a biography now, an autobiography. Did I hear that?
Oh no, I'm too young for that. I'm writing I'm writing a new book. It'll be memoir-esque. There's going to be, again, just by the nature of, I don't want to do another personal development book that teaches you how to set goals and this, that, and the other. I want to share my own struggles and insecurities and sticking.
Autobiographical.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
So what would the title be then? If you could sum it up?
I had two ideas for a title. It's going to come out next September, so I got a bit of time. But the first was which is a little bit maybe metaphysical or a little bit maybe a little bit too spiritual for the publisher, would be an invitation back home. An invitation back home, and the thinking behind that is, anytime I'm angry or I'm frustrated or any of those difficult emotions, there's an invitation back home. So as much as I say, where do you go when you're lonely? There's two places we can go when we feel a difficult emotion. One is we can self-abandon and do something stupid that's destructive and takes us away from ourselves, further away from ourselves. So I feel angry at someone and I lash out at them, and now I feel even further disconnected. Mm-hmm. The other place I can go when I feel a difficult emotion is back home, back to myself. So it's kind of like, okay, I feel angry. Why do I feel that? What's the pattern? And I understand myself. So the first title I had in mind was an invitation back home, to say that any struggle in your life is an invitation to more intimately know yourself. And the second one was simply some things I've learned. That was what I was going to call it. Some things I've learned. And that is, just the premise of the book is I've put myself around a lot of very intelligent people. I've taken what I've learned, I've applied it. I've some of it's worked, other stuff hasn't worked as well for me. And
because I'm just thinking for the song, if you could write the, where do you go when you're lonely, is such a good. I mean, that's such a good line. I mean, that's great. You just can have the melody. A melody arrives when you have a line like that. So,
isn't that a song already?
It is. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
I need another. I need you to give me another one, then I can. Because I think you keep repeating meaning. So I think that's got to be a big part of it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, something will come to me. I mean, I wasn't sure because, a lot of people, when I'm interviewing them, they've written a book and it's about, this thing. So we just talk about that book, and then afterwards I could just make the song, just summarize read the inside cover. And,
well,
make that rhyme.
I've done 3 previous books. I just don't promote them all that much because I think they're okay. I don't think they're all.
I looked at those. Yeah, I looked at those. You had one on paleo.
Oh yeah, naked paleo.
I didn't see I didn't. The most famous one is the last one, though. The what is it? 21.
Yeah. 21 Day Jumpstart was the first one. The last one was called Upgrade Your Life, and the thinking behind that was we upgrade our phones and our cars and our clothes, but we maybe keep the same thought patterns that we've had for years and don't consider them. And I sometimes think about, your thoughts and your feelings are a little bit like the hardware of a computer, and then the habits and the daily rituals are like the software. Some of us are always trying to update the software, but the hardware is just out of date. So
I already had that in a song. No, I've already done that one. I had to upgrade the hardware of brain with the software of mind. That was from
really
from Bliss Brain. I'm just making other people's words rhyme. So I've done that one.
Okay,
but yeah. I mean, Victor Franco, I'm not going to be able to interview him on the podcast, so I think you're the next best thing. What a
man. His stuff is just incredible. Man's Search for Meaning. It's he talk about, the other thing that's running around my head that I've heard him say in recent times, or I've listened to in recent times, was talks about developing conscience in terms of listening to yourself and then acting on what you hear. So a lot of us are looking for things outside that are only inside. So like self-esteem. There's a clue in where self-esteem comes from, and it says so it comes from the self. And I think self-esteem comes from creating a little bit of quiet, and then listening to the whisper. There's a whisper in your heart or wherever that's telling you, oh,
super conscious.
Yes, yeah. So connecting to that, and then I guess the difficulty is that decisiveness to act on what I hear. So it says this relationship is on the rocks, and then I got to act on that, and not just be a passive kind of participant, but decide, okay, I'm gonna put all my efforts into this for the next couple of months and see where it goes, or I'm gonna walk away from it or whatever. But be decisive, and then my self-esteem increases because I listened to the thing that's there, as Udo would say. Listen and act, and I think.
But also being able to that confidence, like to listen and say this, because have you had those? I had another guest, Stephen C. Hayes, about the ACT, and one of his exercises, the ACT therapy, is that you write down what the voice is repeating, and so you write it down, and then you notice sometimes that it's that every thought that you think the opposite, and there's an opposite counter argument, and then you go back, and it's an argument in your brain between these two different opinions. Yes. Because we're this collection of opinions now. We're not just one. There's more than one program running up here. So it's
so funny. I signed up to a course with I signed up to the ACT course 2 days ago with Stephen Hayes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, he was my second guest.
Amazing. I'm going to have a listen.
Yeah.
You mentioned there the contrasting opinions. Something popped into my head. I'm doing a course at the moment that I'm participating in a lot of courses on authentic relating and just how to be a better communicator, because I'm not a very good listener at times. But there was a great quote. She said something to the effect of, everything that's going on outside of ourselves is an assumption. I'm assuming the way you look at me is good or bad. I'm assuming that the phone call that's come through there is good news or bad news. I'm assuming my partner is going to show up at home the exact same way they always do. Everything's an assumption, and it's an interesting kind of. Again, it talks to that lack of curiosity as we get older. Maybe there's more judgment than curiosity. And again, you talk about it there with the prejudice when we talked about that earlier, that we're becoming more prejudiced because we decide people are a certain way. We put them in a box, and we decide we are a certain way. We have these, again, talk about identity. I am, fill in the blank, and that's who you are. Whether it's true or it's not, you'll act in accordance to how you see yourself. So, I am not a good dancer. I am not a good cook. I am not good at languages. All these. That's when my dad. I was here in my dad's family. That seems to have been the thing that was carried down. They all say it. All his brothers and sisters say, we're not good at languages in our house. Now, if your parents,
you're good at one, no?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they probably argue that one as well. But again, it was something actually from the fitness space back in the day where people would say, I've got bad genetics, and you'd say, well, do you have bad genetics for weight loss? Or is it that you eat the same way as your parents ate, and your parents ate in an unhealthy way? Is it genetics, or is it the behavior? Or is it the thought process? But I thought that assumption thing was, I think a lot of stress in life comes from expectations and stories about how things should be, and the world not matching the picture we have in our head about how it should be. So that's one skill I'm really going to try and put into play for the next couple of years, for the rest of my life, this curiosity. Again, stress is a judgment. Oh, it should be different to how it is. Well, it's not. So just get on with it and be curious about why it is the way it is. And someone asked about that the other day. I was doing a podcast. They were talking about what's important in life. I was saying the fluidity of life. Like, life is changing all the time, but we're trying to grasp onto the way things were. Like how I was 5 years ago, how I was a year ago, how my partner was last weekend. It's kind of like, no, be fluid. Like be with whatever's happening in the moment, and not easy, but.
Yeah, no, one of these prejudices and these assumptions. I mean, when you were coming on the show, I research you and I think what you're going to be like, and because I'm quite concentrating because I have to write a song. So, but because of your podcast, and that is very personal. It's, I kind of knew what you were going to be like. So, that, and you've definitely lived up to being that. You are like you. So, I wasn't sure I was going with that really. But
well, Jack, I run men's groups now, because
that's a tough job, no? That's meant to
Oh, I
talk
love,
about their feelings. It's like,
I love it, but you know, I find we're just mirrors to one another. So I find like when I lean in with my insecurities and vulnerabilities, people tend to give you back this.
yeah.
It's just rapport, right? That's just how we tend to, because we want to connect, even if it's difficult. But so I was in the fitness space till probably 2016, and then I started doing these talks and seminars, and the rooms were just getting fuller and fuller. And initially, it was mostly women because that was my fitness clientele, and then some men started showing up, and I'm looking, and I'm like, these men were definitely dragged along by their partners, and sometimes they'd tell me, my partner made me come to this thing tonight. But over time, the demographic in the room started to change to the point where it was kind of half men, half women. And I was like, this is cool, this is amazing, and I just resonate more with a man saying to me, you know, your story about, you know, your struggles really connected with me because I could just see myself in the other men. But we did an exercise on one of our calls the other night. We have a kind of ongoing group, and it was this assumptions piece. So I had the lads paired off, and one person would talk and the other would listen. And the person who was talking would make assumptions for 2 minutes about the person in front of them. So, and there was no talking. So I might say, I would imagine you like travel. I would imagine you are in a relationship. I would imagine you, and they would just go. The other person wouldn't talk, but they could put up hand signals from 0 to 5. So they could hold up 0 with their
great
fingers.
Exercise, yeah.
But it kind of backfired because my hope was to say that it didn't backfire. It always works the way it's supposed to work. But my hope was that they would see that most of the assumptions we make are not accurate. But they came back and they were like, yeah, I pretty much got full marks. You know, I got everything. Because they kind of know each other. But it is an interesting exercise because, again, if you're going out with someone or you know, you look to people that you're close with in terms of friends and family, when you first meet them for the first couple of months, there's a lot of curiosity there and getting to know them and be excited to find out more about them and have experiences and all this kind of stuff. And then we just fall into patterns, which is normal. And we make assumptions and we decide who they are and we box them off. And now we're not with the person in front of us anymore. We're with the picture in our head about who that person is.
Right, yeah.
And so it's like, how can I bring that back to the relationship or the friendship or whatever it is? It's this treating each conversation as if I've never met this person before to some degree, which is not easy. But,
well, podcasting is a great exercise. I mean, I'm learning so much from every interview. I'm getting so much better, and I think it's like 500 fights I need to before I'm a good. You remember that quote from Knock Around Guys? Vin Diesel said.
No.
500 street fights. That's how many I need.
Yes, I think. I think it's, you could treat this like an apprenticeship, right? Like, I'm kind of treating 2021 like an apprenticeship for certain stuff that I want to become better at. So I got to put my hours in. So, and like that, how do you get better at anything you practice? Yeah. And
no, I really feel like I feel like I made friends with you in this hour. You know, I really feel like if I ever come to, I've actually been to Galway. I was through there 2 years ago. I went to play. I travelled down the Atlantic Way. I went to play in a music festival in Cork, the West Cork Yoga Festival. That was great. I loved that. But it did rain every day. But,
Cork is cool, man. The Cork people are a law unto themselves. Cork and Donegal.
That was crazy. I loved it.
Yeah, if you come to Galway, let me know, and you've got a place to stay. So I'd love to have you over.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Wow. I'd read your library. I mean, that sounds like you.
Yeah, there's a bunch of books in this house.
All right. Well, I better crack on with the song here then. So I think I better let it all, because I don't know which direction it's going to go still. So I'm just going to let it ferment.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Do you know what I can send you? I don't know if it has to be based on this interview solely, but there's an 11-minute documentary that was filmed last year that hasn't been released yet, but it's in a lot of film.
I tried to watch it online, yeah, but I couldn't find it.
I can send you a preview to that, and that might give you some ideas too.
Because it won lots of, you got into festivals and...
yeah. Maybe it was
Does that look great?
I think it was an easier year to get into festivals with it being online.
Don't put yourself down. That's not in the...
I love myself unconditionally. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
No, and I'll send you the ACT song as well. So you don't need to do the whole course. Just listen to the 4-minute song.
Amazing.
It's a lot quicker.
I'd love to share it with my audience if that's cool with you.
Of course, that would be lovely.
Brilliant. Nice one, Jack.
Nice one. Great chatting to you,
Talk to you soon. Mind yourself.
Will for power or will for pleasure, dragons you are chasing. Meaning is more powerful, 'cause by the means you measure, be it what you encounter, your actions or your deeds. Welcome lessons as they come, don't try to feed your needs. Things aren't always the way you see them, therapy from meaning. Old man sad, old man crying 'cause his wife has gone. He loved her more than life itself, it's a tragedy, I'm dying. But what if he had died before? Think then of the pain, his sufferings, the price he's paid to spare her all that strain. Things aren't always the way you see them, therapy from meaning. Sometimes high anxiety, others low depression. Hard to keep track of the waves, where are you in society? You've the freedom to choose response to any situation. And suffering's not suffering when you're signification. Things aren't always the way you see them, therapy from meaning.
Hello and welcome to the end of the show. This is traditionally where I ask you to share the episode, rate and review it on your podcast app, and listen to the song on Spotify, iTunes, or even better, download it so you can have it forever from podsongs.com. It's only €1 or $1, and that money goes to pay for the musicians, Maurizio San Nicola, Massimino Vozza, and my researcher Dori Verba. Thanks to you, the listener. See you next time.